Ah mon dieu. Oh, j'en ai marre de cette journée. Oh, je stream uniquement parce que j'ai envie. Et parce que juste parce que j'avais envie en fait. Parce que là, franchement, je suis à deux doigts juste d'aller dans mon lit et de regarder peut-être un film ou une vidéo. Juste rester dans mon lit et annuler le stream, mais non. Oh la journée de merde. En fait, j'explique. Ma journée, elle a commencé à vers 9h. C'est une heure plutôt normale pour Monsieur Seiferouk. Voilà, c'est une heure plutôt normale pour commencer le travail YouTube. Et du coup, ce que je fais, c'est que je commence à faire du coup mon petit tweet conseil d'un enculé machin sur Twitter. Je regarde les jeux vidéo. Enfin, les actus sur les jeux. Bon, il n'y a rien de... Mais tu viens de rentrer, espèce de connard. Oh, c'est pas possible. Et du coup... Et du coup, voilà, ouais, je me mets dessus. Je voulais faire la liste des jeux qui sont dans le gameplay PS Plus, mais au final j'ai abandonné parce que l'idée est pas super bonne. Ouais. Et après, alors je réfléchis. Après, j'ai fait une vidéo. Mais au bout de 3 minutes de vidéo, ma mère elle m'appelle et elle me dit ouais, Burger King a appelé si tu pouvais faire des heures sup. Je recommençais à 11h45 au lieu de 14h. Je termine ma vidéo, je fonce à la douche, je me douche, rase, habille en... Franchement, en 20 minutes, quoi. Je vais bosser 11h45 jusque genre 13h30. 13h30, enfin 14h, je reviens jusque 18h, 18h10, un truc comme ça. Je reviens, il est 40. Et là, c'est le bordel, en fait. Hein. Après, de 18h40 jusque 20h40. Ça, c'était ma journée d'aujourd'hui, quoi. Mais c'était vraiment, il fallait que je fasse absolument ça pour pouvoir faire ça, pour pouvoir faire ça, pour pouvoir faire ça. Et puis une fois que j'ai tout terminé, franchement, j'étais là, j'ai fait bon, bah c'est passé dans les temps. Tout va bien, j'ai fait mon boulot correctement. Vas-y, je me casse. Et là, je viens de me casser et je suis enfin rentré. Sauf que bah, c'est l'heure de streamer. Voilà, donc chiant. J'aime pas les journées comme ça. Mais j'ai une nouvelle souris. Hey, regardez. Une nouvelle souris. Et elle n'a pas le... Voilà, j'ai pas besoin de le faire. Donc ça veut dire que ça venait peut-être de la souris le problème. Et j'ai du jus d'orange. Donc écoutez. L'orange, c'est la santé. Allez. Tac. Du coup, ce soir, nous sommes partis du coup pour la fin du 100% de Gnome. J'aimerais setup Jurassic Land d'évolution. Qu'on fera... Je sais pas quand. On fera d'ailleurs peut-être... Alors je pense que les découvertes, on ne fera que des découvertes, soit des démos, soit... J'hésite. Où est-ce qu'on met les jeux PS Plus dans les découvertes? Je trouve que ça fait déjà beaucoup en ayant Ubisoft, GOG, Steam, Epic. Avec, évidemment Origin si un jour ils décident de mettre des jeux gratuitement. Je sais pas. Je vais me laisser jeudi. Si on fait les... Enfin, si je décide de faire des découvertes PlayStation, on les ferait jeudi. Parce que vendredi, c'est les jeux gratuits Epic. Enfin, c'est le jeu gratuit Epic. Qu'on fera et du coup, c'est vendredi soir. Ça vous va comme ça? Voilà, je me laisse un temps de réflexion. Savoir est-ce qu'on fait les jeux du mois PS Plus, les 3 jeux du mois, c'est tout. C'est Lone Gamer 2, F1 2023 et Sifu. C'est pas exceptionnel, mais c'est pas non plus... franchement, c'est pas non plus immonde. Est-ce qu'on se ferait ça, voilà. Et puis après, dès qu'on a terminé le mode commentaire de Gnome, on se fait un petit peu de boum boum Shakataka. Ça fait longtemps. Ils ont enfin mis, j'ai vu hier soir, sans déconner, hier soir, il est 1h30 du matin. J'arrive pas à dormir parce que j'avais fait une sieste plus tôt dans la journée. Et je me promène du coup sur TikTok. Et je vois sur un tweet, pendant que je scrollais pendant 2 millièmes de seconde, alors vraiment pas grand chose, je vois que tu peux mettre des cartons sur des étagères dans Supermarket Simulator. Donc on va tester voir la nouvelle mage. Voir si ça marche bien. Si ça me redonne un peu envie de jouer au jeu de façon un peu régulière. Parce que là, en vrai, en bout de 15 heures, en fait, le problème, c'est que on pouvait continuer Supermarket Simulator. Mais sauf que là, oui, ça allait devenir de moins en moins passionnant parce que le rangement, il est super mal fait, quoi. Je trouve vraiment que le rangement dans le jeu est mal fait. Donc voilà. Bon, écoutez, les amis. Il nous reste qu'un seul trophée pour ce cher Gone Home. Hein. C'est évidemment le trophée de faire le mode commentaire. Donc je vais garder, comme hier soir, je vais garder tout simplement une vidéo à côté. Après, ça se trouve, genre, ça va durer 2 heures. Hein. Il y a 68 commentaires. Donc modificateur et commentaires, je vais allumer toute lumière. Je vais ouvrir toutes les portes et je vais mettre les commentaires. Allez, nous sommes donc partis. Bonjour YouTube, j'ai complètement zappé de lancer la VOD. Donc du coup, on vient de lancer la partie sur Gone Home. Et nous allons tout simplement faire la partie avec les commentaires des développeurs. Voilà. Toutes les portes sont ouvertes et j'ai allumé les lumières. Donc autrement dit, nous n'aurons aucun problème. Et en fait, le truc, c'est que dans la vidéo, le mec, il va pas s'arrêter. Nous, on va s'arrêter pour écouter chaque commentaire.
So, Christmas Duck. Christmas Duck is a fan favorite. He's kind of a mascot, I guess. And I think that's partly because it's a weird concept.
Attendez, on va relancer proprement parce que là, j'ai mon... Ouais, j'ai 165 Go de libre encore. Bonjour YouTube, bienvenue du coup pour une nouvelle vidéo sur Gone Home. Fin du 100% aujourd'hui, je suis fatigué aujourd'hui. Donc ça tombe bien, c'est un stream auquel je ne vais pas beaucoup animer, beaucoup parler, puisque nous allons surtout écouter, vous et moi. Et oui, il y a également des choses à apprendre sur ce jeu. Nous allons faire la partie commentaire des développeurs. Donc nous allons relancer une partie. Donc j'ai fait un essai et apparemment OBS n'a pas voulu. Donc on allume les lumières, on ouvre les portes, j'allais dire on allume les portes et on active les commentaires. C'est parti. Oh. Nous sommes donc partis pour le premier commentaire qui était ici, qu'on commençait à écouter jusqu'à ce que ça se coupe.
So, Christmas Duck. Christmas Duck is a fan favorite. He's kind of a mascot, I guess. And I think that's partly because it's a weird...
S'il vous plaît, est-ce que je peux avoir des sous-titres?
concept. So Christmas Duck. Christmas Duck. Hi, I'm Steve Gaynor. I'm the co-founder of the Fulbright. So Christmas Duck.
Bon, le canard de Noël,
He's kind of a
c'est
mascot, I guess. And I think that's
un peu comme une mascotte,
because it's a weird concept.
parce que c'est un concept bizarre.
Christmas duck, and partly because it's like the first unique thing that you encounter in the game. It's kind of
Parce que c'est une des premières choses que tu trouves dans le jeu.
But the thing is, Christmas duck was not planned. When we were
C'était
starting
pas
the
prévu.
project, we didn't have a 3D modeler because Kate came on a couple months after we started, and we needed
C'était
a bunch
déjà
of
là
3D
quand ils avaient commencé les
models.
modèles
So I was
3D.
going through
Du coup, ils se sont dit qu'ils pouvaient le garder.
the Unity asset store. So I was going through the list and saw this Christmas duck. And I was like, what is
Ouais,
that?
après ils ont regardé dans le store, ils ont vu
Okay,
Christmas
and-
Dog, du
and
coup
I
ils se sont
grabbed
dit
it,
tiens
and
c'est
we
marrant, on
used
va
it
l'ajouter
as
dans
a
le jeu.
test object just to set up the system where you can grab stuff and carry it around. And then I ended up saying, all right, we got this Christmas duck, I'll hide the key under it. And instead of replacing the free model with a totally different thing, just made a real version of it. And Carla modeled it and Kate textured
J'ai un
it,
peu la
and,
flemme de traduire comme ça.
Hi, I'm Steve Gaynor.
Oh, allez, zou. Oh non, bah au moins faites proprement votre mode commentaire, quoi, sérieusement. On passe à la suite, j'écoute pas. J'écoute pas, hein. Hop, allez, on Clarvie.
Yeah, the biggest purpose of the card was to say, oh, Sam is 17. You know, if you look for this thing, but there's so much. We need so much handwriting in the game, especially for like one-off characters that you don't see their handwriting more than once. And we knew we needed a birthday card from some member of Sam's more extended family that you were never going to hear from again. And so I was like, okay, it could be her uncle. And as an Easter egg, kind of like wink and nod thing, like we're fans of, you know, the Looking Glass legacy of games and Deus Ex and Dishonored, and so I got in contact with Harvey Smith, who is the lead designer of Deus Ex and the co-creative lead of Dishonored, and asked if he would just write on a piece of paper, "Happy Birthday, Sam," from Uncle Harvey, and he just took a picture with his cell phone and
like 5 minutes after you asked him. It was amazing. He was just like, yes, I will do this immediately.
Yeah.
Bah, c'était cool en vrai. En vrai, c'est marrant.
It was really cool. Harvey's a great guy, and I love his
Dans ces jeux.
Where,
Alors, je ne sais pas qui est Harvey du coup. J'ai rien suivi. Je suis désolé. J'espère que vous aimez bien.
Hell yeah.
Voilà. Et en fait, on n'a même pas besoin d'attendre la fin. Hein. C'est vraiment. Nous, on va écouter parce que j'ai envie de vous faire partager un petit peu le mode commentaire, mais sinon.
The Goodfellow High School jacket and the logo generally is a reference to the logo for Minerva's Den, the section of Rapture that the Goodfellow High School
Merde.
jacket and
J'ai appuyé sur R2 sans faire gaffe, ça m'a enlevé les. En fait, ça m'enlève les sous-titres aussi. C'est super mal fait. Ah oui, celui-là, on va écouter. C'est celui que je vous avais dit. Sur les speedrunners. Ouais, c'est ça.
The fact that there are speedruns for our game makes me really happy, and the fact that, you know, that the any percent speedrun, aka you don't have to pick up anything, just get to the end as fast as possible, has basically been optimized to, I think, 47 or 48 seconds. Even just watching that speedrun is really fun because you see the player optimize, like, for instance, the fastest speedruns, they don't turn on any lights because it would take a fraction of a second to turn towards the light switch and turn it on and then turn back to the direction they wanted to go. And, you know, they just kind of, like, strafe past things and don't even change direction to move through the house. And then, yeah, the 100% Diaries speedrun is even more interesting because players use that secret knowledge.
C'est vrai que c'est intéressant, ouais. Quand tu fais un jeu comme ça et que tu vois les speedruns, comment ils s'organisent.
A strategy for, okay, what's the most efficient way to go to these 24 points in the game?
Like spatially, so it's like this visit, it's the salesman, you know, problem or something, you know, where it has to go to all these different points.
Je pense que c'est un VRP.
Yeah, and so seeing
C'est un taxi.
think about the house in a totally different way and a strategic way that.
Après, le truc, c'est qu'il y a tellement de passages secrets dans la maison.
Player created challenge that says, oh, okay, if I go into the basement first, then back out and into the east wing, then don't even go into the west wing until after dawn and all that kind of stuff.
Ouais, c'est juste l'organisation basique, il n'y a pas besoin d'être speedrunner pour ça. Hein.
Evolve, and I'm really glad that we didn't make it so, for instance, you had to read the note about the secret door before you could even click on the secret door.
C'est vrai, c'est une bonne chose. Ça va bloquer plein de possibilités, exactement. À votre avis, est-ce que c'est déjà arrivé? Genre, je vais vous montrer un truc. Est-ce que c'est déjà arrivé, genre un cas de figure où t'es un mec qui arrive dans la maison, t'es comme ça, tu te balades, tu regardes un peu les trucs ici, tu te colles un peu au mur. Et genre, je sais pas, pour une raison inconnue, tu vas un peu te coller au mur et là tu vois ça, passage secret. Et là t'arrives, bam, c'est la clé du grenier. Tu dis, bah tiens, je vais aller au grenier. Et en fait, tu finis le jeu, quoi. Sur un coup de bol. Je suis sûr qu'il y a... en vrai, il y a moyen que quelqu'un l'ait fait, tu vois. Il y a grave moyen. Le prochain, c'est ici.
Hello. my name is Kate Craig, and I was creating a lot of
Bonjour.
the environment assets for the game. Not all of them, some of them I had help with,
L'orange, c'est
which
la
I'll touch
santé.
on a little later, but most of the stuff like the walls and the floors, some of the larger pieces of furniture were my doing, and I'm going to be talking about some of the environmental storytelling aspects in Gone Home. I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention the work that my wife Emily Carroll did on the project. She did the
Ah, les
house
gays.
title
Bon,
image
c'est
that
un
you're
jeu gay.
viewing
Enfin, c'est
this
un jeu qui
for
prône,
our
en tout
welcome
cas,
notice and for the start screen of the game.
l'homosexualité.
She did the loading
Bah,
cassette
c'est
tape,
normal.
and she did the
Personne
maps in the
LGBT, en
house.
soi, c'est ce qu'elle
And actually,
ressent.
Carla made a font out of her
C'est
hand
biologique?
because we wanted something that was just a little bit spooky, maybe a little ominous, but something that sort of
On
suited
va en parler juste
the
après
tone
parce
of
que
the
je suis en
game.
train de parler par-dessus elle.
And I was really glad to be working with her, and I was really glad that the other guys were too. We had a really good time. And people have responded quite positively to her titles of games, which is something that I really appreciate, and I know she does
C'est
too.
vrai qu'il est joli son écran titre. Il est bien, je le trouve joli. Ouais, alors du coup, l'homosexualité, c'est naturel même dans le règne animal parce qu'en fait, c'est lié à au comment dire, à notre génétique. En fait, dans notre génétique, on va avoir un homme ou un animal mâle, en tout cas, va être attiré naturellement par une femelle. Mais ça peut arriver des fois qu'il y ait des bugs et que des fois, c'est attiré par les mâles, un mâle attiré par un mâle. Ou attiré par personne. C'est totalement possible. C'est quelque chose qui est possible dans le règne animal. Et qui se voit autrement que chez les humains, chez les singes, chez les oiseaux, chez beaucoup d'animaux en fait. Sauf qu'en fait, nous, on est des animaux civilisés. Enfin, dans le sens où on... Comment dire? Dans le sens où nous, on est des sociétés complexes. Et donc, bah, forcément, dès qu'il y a un truc qui est un peu différent, on te frappe sur la gueule. Et en soi, le jeu, bon là, forcément, si vous avez suivi le stream d'hier soir, celui d'aujourd'hui, YouTube, toi, t'as l'avantage parce que t'as directement accès tout de suite, là, maintenant, aux épisodes d'avant pour connaître vraiment l'histoire de Gnome. Mais c'est un jeu qui prône l'homosexualité. Et je trouve que c'est bien fait. Parce que c'est pas dans le cliché, parce que généralement, le cliché dans le jeu vidéo que j'aime pas trop avec les couples homosexuels, c'est qu'ils sont en mode en fait, j'aime les femmes. Alors que non, c'est. La réalité, ce qui est bien fait dans le jeu, c'est juste. Bah, Sam, elle tombe lentement amoureuse de Lonnie, mais elle se dit pas, putain, j'aime une femme. Elle se dit, je suis amoureuse. Elle se pose pas la question de, ah, mais du coup, c'est une femme, et je suis une femme, et du coup, on se pose pas la question. Je sais pas si vous voyez ce que je veux dire. Bon, je suis ouvert à la discussion dans le respect, en tout cas.
Oh man, mom handwriting. We went through a lot of different moms for handwriting. A lot of different moms contributed handwriting for our game.
Il parle de ça.
First, let's see, how did we do? What were we doing first? I think I just did it and it wasn't great. And then we had Emily do it, but her handwriting was used so heavily in other parts of the game that we had to find someone else. And I think we actually had Yaman try to do it for a while before he was Dad's handwriting. And then we got Yaman's mom, and she was ideal for it. Really good mom handwriting. Yeah.
C'est où je me dis qu'en soi, je pense que je kifferais ma race de faire un jeu indé. Mais genre vraiment en mode. Ou même un tournage en fait. Faire réellement du contenu complexe. Mercredi Disney, mine de rien, je ne fais pas le montage. Mais il y a des moments où ça peut devenir un petit peu galère. Genre vraiment sur mon téléphone, j'ai une liste de plans à faire. Et t'as un peu de technique. Alors, et après, là, lorsque je me remets sur le script et que je l'envoie à The Sea Walker, là, on parle full technique. C'est vraiment là, on est dans le complexe. Et en vrai, je me dis, putain, mais en fait, un jeu, c'est des idées que tu mets en place en fonction de ce que tu veux. Donc là, par exemple, un jeu narratif, tu fais surtout attention à l'histoire, comment tu la dissimules, voir si ton histoire, elle est bien, aussi accessoirement, si elle est bien ficelée. Et après, bah, tu tombes sur des détails, genre, bah tiens, en fait, on aimerait une lettre manuscrite de la mer. Ah bah, qui fait la mer? Tu vois, c'est le genre de galère, moi, qui me fait un peu marrer, je trouve. Peut-être un jeu, hein.
Hi, I'm Chris Remo, the composer on Gone Home.
Bonjour.
In my commentary tracks, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what went into creating the original music soundtrack for
Ah
the
bah, je me
game.
doute qu'on va pas parler baseball,
Gone
hein.
Home is an unusual game, musically speaking, in that it consists of two distinct music soundtracks. The one of those probably more frequently commented on is the collection of licensed Riot Girl songs that the player finds in Sam's cassette tapes strewn around the house. The other one is the original music that accompanies the player's undirected exploration of the house and underscores almost every one of Sam's audio diary recordings. When Steve first asked me to do music for Gone Home, I was really excited about it, but there are almost no parameters for what that meant in terms of format or scope. Having played an early build of the game, I started by just doing a few musical sketches with no real regard for length or usage, mainly consisting of vintage electric piano sounds like Wurlitzers and Fender Rhodes. I chose those instruments because I wanted sounds that would feel at home in the era of the game. The Twin Peaks soundtrack used a lot
Ah
of
oui,
those,
c'est
for
vrai, dans Twin
example,
Peaks.
but would also blend into the background
C'est un peu le
and
genre
not
de même
share much
musique,
tone
c'est
in
vrai.
common with the abrasive Riot Girl guitars. Some of the instrumentation and ideas changed from those first sketches, but they also contained one of the main themes that ended up accompanying Sam's arc throughout the final game.
Après, on est sincère, hein. Chris Remo, t'es mignon, mais la musique, on entend juste vite fait des bruits d'orage. Hein.
This is
Tac.
where you find the first half of Sam's Locker, or I guess it's actually the second half of Sam's Locker combo as far as what the piece of paper is. But at first, there were the locker combination sheet was torn into 3 pieces. So you had 1 digit on each of them, and it was actually right before we sent out our IGF build to the judges. It was the night before, and Carla came down to the basement, and she was like, at 3 o'clock in the morning last night, I woke up in bed just being like, oh, we can't have it in 3 pieces, that's way too gamey. Well, that's bad, we have to fix that. And
I forgot about that.
and you were absolutely right. And you've had a couple of those being woken up by us making a bad decision kind of moments over the course of the development, and they were always important changes that needed to be made.
Après, là, ce qu'il dit, c'est plutôt intéressant, mais je me dis pas, c'est trop classique. Moi, je me dis, c'est peut-être trop long. Parce que le premier morceau, il est là. Le deuxième morceau, je crois qu'il est à l'étage à côté de la salle de bain, si je me trompe pas. Je crois que c'est la deuxième partie du code. Et en soi, bon... je me dis pas, c'est trop classique. Je me dis, c'est peut-être trop long. Ça ferait pas... En fait, ce serait limite chiant, en fait, si tu te retrouves en fait, à vagabonder dans la maison, trouver le troisième morceau de machin. Je sais pas ce que vous en pensez.
Corin Tucker from Heavens to Betsy. And Heavens to Betsy was a band that formed in 1991, actually. And I actually got the idea for joining a band when I moved to Olympia, Washington, and became a fan of the music scene there. And it seemed like everyone was in a band. So I decided I was going to start a band too. But I didn't actually start the band until I went home after the first year of college. I went back to Eugene, Oregon, and my high school friend
J'ai déjà
Tracy
fini de
Sawyer
lire.
and I started playing music
Ah,
together.
j'écoute
and
pas,
that
je
was
lis.
the beginning of
Sauf
Heavens
que
to
je lis
Betsy.
extrêmement vite.
So I had told, with my big mouth, I had told all my friends that I was going to start a band. And the summer of, I think it was 1991, my friend Michelle Noel booked
Michelle
the
Noel.
International Pop Underground in Olympia,
C'est ouf, quand
Washington.
même.
And she helped organize a night at the convention called Girl Night. And it was all women musicians. So she called me and said, hey, let's get you on stage with that.
Tu vas monter sur scène, espèce d'enculé.
So, this totally new band that had never performed before. I mean, we had never performed
Ça, c'est
ever
ouf, hein.
any kind of music.
Après, Evans to
got
Betsy,
invited to
je
play
suis
this
sincère, je les connais pas.
big show at the Capitol Theater in
Inconnu au
Olympia
bataillon.
in front of all of our musical heroes, right?
Je suis sincère.
Everyone from K Records, all of Fugazi was there, all of Bikini Kill was there. This music that I was a huge fan of. Suddenly, that was our very
Après,
first
Fugazi,
show, the very
Bikini
first
Kill, je connais pas
Heavens
non
to
plus.
Betsy show. And we were terrified, but we did it. And
C'est qu'ils ont jamais rien joué, mais c'est vraiment, en fait, ils avaient littéralement que des musiques originales, en fait. C'est chaud, hein. Est-ce que si vous étiez artiste et que vous ayez déjà dans la situation actuelle, vous ayez que des chansons originales, est-ce que ça aurait... franchement, ça doit vous donner en plus double stress, quoi.
So here's one of Dad's pulpy JFK books. He's now moved on from primary sources to theories about how JFK was killed. However, this one purports to contain the truth. Yeah, the publishing company is a doofy inside joke because, you know, there's Harcourt Brace, the publisher that exists, and so I was trying to think of a good name for a publisher, and being a big nerd, I immediately thought of Harcourt Fenton Mudd and how he basically sounds like a publishing company.
Ah, c'est Hardcore Phantom Books.
You have to say who that is.
No! Alright, fine. He's an awful character from
Star Trek.
Original Star Trek, which is called Mudd's Women, and also there's another one whose name I can't remember for some reason.
I'm Mudd.
Ah, fuck. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
It's a Star Trek reference. You did
Yes.
it, Carla.
What?
Ok. En vrai, c'est marrant parce que tu vois que... Ah bah, John Mann, le fameux.
The doors were actually one of the hardest things in the game to get working correctly, and I know that there's still some
Quelques bugs.
bugs existing with the doors, actually. But it's a surprisingly hard problem, which is why most video games just have doors that kind of slide away
Voilà,
into
ça c'est pas
nothingness
possible.
or open in strange ways, or don't, you know, let you interact fully with doors. But of course, it's in a house like in Gone Home, a realistic house. It's important that everything be as
Ouais, s'ouvre des deux
natural
côtés,
as
ce qui n'est pas
possible.
possible.
The
Hein.
concession we made to video gaminess
Ça peut pas
is that
s'ouvrir
doors
comme ça.
all swing both ways, which
Ça arrive jamais, bah
is
oui.
real
Ou alors
hard.
si ça arrive, il faut
But
qu'elle
it's
soit spéciale.
necessary to prevent the player trapping themselves in some strange state.
Surtout, ça se voit que c'est pas une porte qui est faite pour. Là, en fait, elle est faite uniquement pour qu'elle s'ouvre comme ça. Parce que là, oui, là, tes charnières ici, elles sont bonnes. Si c'est où alors, si c'est de l'autre côté, là, ça fait très bizarre. Genre là, les charnières, elles seraient là. C'est super long. Hein. C'est même pas forcément très très au centre, quoi. Dites-moi les pro masters de porte.
One of our favorite movies is The Apartment, which was directed by Billy Wilder, and it starred Shirley MacLaine and Jack Lemmon, and it's from like 1960, and it's basically what Mad Men is, except actually from that time.
Yeah.
It's super good, and there's this weird like kind of humorous vocal tick that some of the executives in the movie have, where they will refer to something like, they'll say like, we're doing quite well dividends wise or something, and Shirley MacLaine's character is named, her last name is Kubelik, and one of the executives at different times says something like, so how are you getting along?
Portez-vous en termes de
Kubelik-wise?
Kubelik.
So anyway,
C'est vraiment tiré pour les cheveux, mais le terme Kubelik est wise. Je veux dire en termes de qui réduit le testament d'Oscar, c'est un petit clin d'œil. Un petit Hardcore Fenton. C'est marrant, moi je trouve ça marrant mettre des petits easter eggs comme ça.
Wink and nod, a little Hardcore Fenton.
Quiet, Steve.
But yeah, The Apartment, you should watch it
It's damn worth it. It's totally worth your time. It's a really good movie.
on Laserdisc.
Yeah.
Sur Laserdisc, au secours. Oh, ça fait bien longtemps qu'on n'est plus au Laserdisc. Le Laserdisc c'était il y a 20 ans. Le prochain. Le prochain il est là-bas.
Here we have Fresh Magazine, which is a synthesis and pastiche of Sassy Magazine, which if you haven't looked at it, or if it wasn't, you know, something that you cared about in the early 90s, it was very feminist and, you know, strongly individualist and actually gave good advice. It was actually really good. Anyway, so yeah, this is the type treatment, the super grungy type treatment is totally indicative. That's how it used to be. Oh yeah, and amusingly, of course, our cover model is Rachel, Steve's wife. I had to
Ah, pas eu le
make her
choix.
put on this awful light pink lipstick and do the 90s-ist stuff. imaginable.
Sarah Rose.
Was your idea to put a braid in the front of her bangs?
Yes.
Yeah, it seems like. Congratulations.
Oh,
C'est marrant,
thanks.
c'est marrant. Par contre, c'est très bizarre parce que là, si t'es comme ça, t'as l'impression qu'il pleut sur la lampe. Je sais pas si vous voyez ce que je veux dire. Là, théoriquement, il pleut également dessus. Ça devrait pas être le cas. Tu devrais avoir de la lumière sur la fenêtre, c'est tout. Tu devrais pas avoir l'impression qu'il pleut à l'intérieur de la maison. Regardez, on dirait même qu'il pleut sur le fauteuil. C'est pas bon du tout. Faut attention à ça, Younes. Hein. Oui, 0451, c'est une ref à beaucoup de jeux, genre même Bioshock la reprend, cette ref.
Inside of this file folder, you find the first combination code in the game. This code goes to Dad's locked filing cabinet, and it's 0451, which is a bit of a tradition slash in-joke amongst... I mean, it's not really an in-joke,
Ça vient d'un film d'SF. Je sais plus exactement ce que c'était.
Of games that hark back to immersive sims that are kind of first-person
Ouais, Underworld, System Shock et derrière Bioshock. Mais voilà, Deus Ex, Système de Choc, Bioshock. Bioshock 2 également reprend cette blague, enfin reprend à peu près le même code. C'est un truc, oui, qui est beaucoup repris. Mais c'est pas tant ça dans Dishonored. J'ai travaillé sur quelques jeux à part le code 0451. Ça vient d'un bouquin de base. Le code 0451, c'est un code qui est très connu dans le jeu vidéo en termes d'anecdotes. C'est une blague qui est très connue. En fait, si vous connaissez, vous comprenez tout de suite la référence. C'est comme 42. Si vous dites 42, si vous comprenez la référence, vous rigolez. Joke.
And you made it the tattoo on your arm.
I also got a tattoo of 0451 because it is sort of a symbol of this certain philosophy of game design that's important to me. And yeah, this writing, breaking canon, is in Emily's handwriting. Emily's handwriting is technically only in the font that exists outside the game.
Moi, je voudrais...
any of the characters, but yeah, I had her write 0451 in her very...
Ah, il y a 0451 dans Spider-Man 2. Je vous spoil pas. Hein.
That source image as the image that you find on the inside of this folder here.
Non. Je trouve... Mais il me semblait vraiment, oui, que ça venait d'un bouquin de base. Et que du coup, ça a été repris dans des jeux de SF. Et après, c'est repassé sur d'autres jeux, en fait. Ça s'est un peu élargi. Je saurais plus exactement, mais c'est une blague qui est assez, comme j'ai dit, c'est une blague qui est assez connue dans le jeu vidéo. C'est pas une blague qui sort de nulle part, genre en soi 0450, enfin 0451, c'est vraiment, c'est une blague plutôt connue.
When you're putting like lamps and stuff around a house, one thing that you have to deal with is plugging them in. And something that always annoys me about level design in games is when there's something, some lamp or piece of electronics that would have to be plugged in because it doesn't run on batteries, but it doesn't have a cable because video games. And so since a big part of the point of Gone Home is the specificity of the house and the believability of all the details,
Because of that, Steve himself.
I spent some late nights with my meager Maya skills modeling custom cables for each of the things.
Ça se voit qu'il s'est fait
plugged
chier,
in
par
so
contre. hein.
that the cables actually run from the TV or the lamp or whatever to an outlet in the wall.
It is a really good detail. I think that I'm proud of you for getting that in there. Steve. It's important.
C'est important,
Yeah.
c'est sûr. Il se fout de sa gueule. Au secours, Steve.
So these are all the VHS tapes, or most of them, in the house. And these in the TV room are from they only belong to Dad and Sam, because Mom has some VHS tapes, but they're up in the bedroom. And you can tell Dad's because he writes in a big, heavy, all caps style handwriting, and Sam does not. So, contrary to popular opinion, the X-Files tapes are not Dad's, they're in fact
Ouais, les
Sam's.
cassettes X-Files.
But stuff like JFK
Yes.
has an obvious dad interest, and some of the other stuff that we put in there was very much like, what is a dad movie?
Yeah.
You know, what is a if when we were growing up, for instance, like what is a movie that our dad or a neighbor's dad would have? So stuff like the Andromeda Strain or Moonraker, it's just sort of like, yeah, dads
Dads love that.
Sont là, ouais,
yeah,
c'est
dads
bon.
that were born in the 50s were super into that kind of stuff. And then some of it was, you know, stuff that we liked or
Blade
remembered
Runner,
from when we were
Director's
growing up,
Cut.
like you
Beetlejuice,
will know that
Robocop.
Carlo was involved in making this game because Beetlejuice and Robocop are on,
Ah bah voilà.
are on a VHS tape. That's most of what you need to know about Carla.
That's true.
Right there.
C'est marrant, genre de petites anecdotes comme ça.
My name is Sarah Grayson, and I do the voice of Sam Greenbrier in Gone Home. Currently based out of Portland, Oregon, so right around where the Fulbright Company is from, which is part of, I guess, how this all came to be. I started doing voiceover work probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a bit of an on and off journey because I also have had regular 9-to-5 jobs that whole time. So I always get excited when I see video game auditions come across because it's always been something that I wanted to do and really excites me because I'm a video game fan myself. So there was an audition that came across that at the time was entitled Dear Diary, and it had this wonderful description about being this sort of 16, 17-year-old girl. Not too much detail about her, just that she was new to her school, new to this place she was living. And her sister had moved
L'audition cachée, quoi.
so she was sort of writing out her thoughts as if she was talking to her sister. So most of the time, I'll stand up at the mic when doing auditions. But for this one, I thought, well, no one's actually going to read their diary standing up. Like this is kind of you write your diary while lying down on your bed or like sitting cross-legged on the floor or whatever. So I ended up having to pull the mic down, sat on my couch, legs crossed, got nice and cozied up in like my pajamas, and started reading it.
C'est intelligent. C'est très très bien même. Franchement, je suis... C'est une anecdote marrante, puis même plutôt les simples, quoi. Effectivement, elle a un point. Tu
Most
te
of the
mets pas
shelves
debout.
in the house are filled with undifferentiated books. I mean, they're not undifferentiated, but they are low detail because, God, it would be an entire dev cycle's worth of work to actually do plausible spines on every single book. That would kill us. And then to repeat a whole bunch of books would also be sort of terrible and not be very plausible. So we had chiefly unlabeled books or books in which the labels have been rubbed off due to age, etc. And we had a few individual books that were more precisely and specifically named.
The way that we did the books in the game is we made like 3 or 4 of these clumps of books that have the generic spines on them. They're just sort of filler books. They're kind of like what would be in the bookshelves of like a lawyer's office in a cheap lawyer's TV commercial or
Right,
something.
where they buy them by the foot and whatever.
Yeah, and then we took 1 or 2 clumps and retextured them to all have specific readable spines on them, and then I just took those clumps and broke them up and scattered the individual books around in different bookshelves in the house, so that hopefully I think every bookshelf has at least one unique book in it. That might not be true of everything in the library since there's so many bookshelves there, but I guess I should say every or almost every bookcase had at least one unique book in it that never repeated, to kind of split the difference of, okay, they're not all generic, but also we can't afford to make them all unique, and we didn't want to have any repeat in an obvious way. So
C'est très compliqué pour la chose simple qu'il a dit quand même.
for trying to not do any of the things that we wanted to not do.
Il aurait juste pu dire, bon bah en fait on a acheté plein de livres, enfin plein de modèles de livres. Bah là par contre, ils foutent de ma gueule ou quoi? Alors oui, on voulait pas que ce soit répété de la même manière. Bah putain, le rouge, tu vois que ça et tu vois bien que le reste c'est mis exactement identique quoi. Il y a tellement d'étagères ici. Ouais bah oui, bah super. Il y a tellement d'étagères ici, il y en a 3. 3. Et les 3 ne sont... Ouais c'est ça, il y a que celle-là où... Oui, je veux bien le croire. Et encore, parce que ça et ça, c'est identique. Oh non, je ne vais plus continuer. Je vais pas regarder ça. Je me fais du mal.
This is our old-timey record that we got from archive.org, source of all good things. It's by Adrian Rollini when he was with apparently the Taproom Gang. The song is entitled
Gang.
Got a Need for You, in case you can't read it, but you should be able to read it. And the duck I found on the internet. Adrian Rollini I got into him when I was on Bioshock 2 and
Ah, elle a travaillé sur Bioshock.
for that, and I did a lot of listening to 40s big band stuff, and Adrian Rollini was one of the ones that I really liked, and so it was cool to be able to revisit that.
Ok.
Sam's story slash
Il n'y a pas de sous-titres. Nous passons directement à la suite. Ah bah, désolé, hein, mais je ne peux pas traduire comme ça, c'est chiant.
I feel like one of the best bits of advice was actually from the Fulbright team before going in to do the first recording. And it was a suggestion that I should watch some episodes of My So-Called Life, which was great because I'd watched them all when when they were actually on. It was one of those favorite shows my sister and I would sit down and watch every week. And so going back and watching them was definitely not a hard chore to have to do. So I basically went through all of the episodes I could find online in a couple of days. So it was a bit of a sudden binge watch of My So-Called Life, but it was great because I think watching My So-Called Life was a nice reminder of what a more natural presentation
qu'à 17 ans, ouais, dans le jeu.
So it was really... I don't know that it would have gone as well had I not done that.
Composing the ambient exploration tracks definitely ended up being the weirdest part of creating music for Gone Home. The audio diaries tended to take precedence since they had such clear criteria for completion, so the ambient tracks were the last things I did. I spent so long immersed in the logs, which were very specifically timed, that to suddenly shift gears to creating these slow, standalone 5-minute pieces was surprisingly difficult. I remember giving Steve a first stab at the ambient track for part 2 of the game, and I didn't hear anything back about it. When I eventually asked if he had any feedback, he said something like, "Oh yeah, it's great, I just slowed it down by 50% and it totally works," which cracked me up, because I definitely didn't have that in mind. But that's one of the great things about collaborative work, so I just went with it. I ended up doing a number of further revisions where I'd alter elements of the original version specifically to affect how the 50% slowed version would sound. It was definitely a new experience for me, writing bits of music and trying to imagine how they would sound after it's been considerably distorted.
C'est intéressant, ouais.
Though, the ambient track for part 1 ended up being a backwards version of the slowed down part 2 track. And again, there were elements that sounded good at 50% slow forwards, but not at 50% slow backwards. So again, I went back to the original track and started altering elements so they would sound better at half speed in reverse. I don't know if that's a thing ambient composers end up getting used to, but for me it definitely felt like going down the rabbit hole.
One of the larger assets that we needed for the basement to really give it character and personality was a furnace. And when we were initially thinking of the furnace, Steve had mentioned to me the furnace from Home Alone, which if you're from,
C'est
if
vrai.
you grew up in the 90s like I did, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I did a lot of research and looked up stuff that could kind of evoke a similar feeling, and we finally settled upon octopus furnaces, which are like they're thematically and time-wise very appropriate. They're these giant hulking monstrosities with all these arms covered in asbestos. Really perfect. So we ended up modeling one of those and put it in the corner, and I think it turned out okay.
Ok, bon, c'est intéressant comme anecdote.
Oh man, this thing.
So 2 things. 1, Mom's Canadian.
Yay!
2, Mom didn't start out Canadian. The reason that Mom is Canadian is because Kate Craig and Emily Carroll are Canadian, and early on in the development of the game, Emily did Mom's handwriting.
This is before she did any of the UI text during the
Right, and it was before we decided that all the moms were going to actually be written by moms and all that kind of stuff.
Integrity in moms.
And so we had the answering machine note in the foyer, and there the line, what's the actual line that's there? It's like
Neighborhood.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So the line on the thing is like, Daniel from the old neighborhood call him back. And we gave the text to Emily, and she wrote it out longhand and gave it back to us. And then I looked at it, and I realized that she had inserted a U into the word neighborhood.
Because it's what you do.
Because of being Canadian. And so to fix that bug, instead of removing the U, I said, bug fixed, Mom is now Canadian.
On dirait moi. On dirait moi lorsque je fais un genre, je fais allez vas-y fuck.
So there's this little scrap of paper that's hidden under this
Il n'y a pas de
bedside.
sous-titres.
You know, there was kind of this intellectual, cross-cultural, like pen pal thing that happened before the internet. You know, we used to write letters back and forth to each other about our ideas and about how we wanted to change things. And so a bunch of these women that I mentioned came up with this idea of Riot Girl, of being a punk rocker that was also an in-your-face feminist.
Ok.
There's a little bit of concern on my part before any of this got started that you never know how much liberty you're going to be given and how much over direction you're going to get, because somebody hears it like a specific way, and if you deviate from that at all, you're just going to keep doing the line over and over and over again, like 50 times until it's right. So I really wasn't sure what to expect, but even on the first day getting in there and being able to go through a few of the lines and just give them what came to mind, and seeing how closely I think everyone was on the page about it. So the direction was always really positive, and it was always kind of coming from either additional information that changed the context of what I was reading, or a certain change in the phrasing or the way something is being, you know, a pause here or maybe move it to here, or instead of emphasizing this word, try this one instead. So you end up with a lot of different takes that really give it a very different feeling depending on which
C'est
one
bien,
you go
en
for.
faisant comme ça par contre c'est bien. C'est bien, c'est quelque chose que j'aimerais bien réussir à faire, mais après je suis un très mauvais acteur, donc c'est très compliqué pour moi de faire, mais c'est une bonne chose de faire. Comme ça en fait au moment de la mise en place, bah, t'as pas besoin de te dire merde ça va pas super bien comme je voudrais, bah en soi t'as plusieurs versions. Donc tu vois laquelle te va le mieux, et si jamais aucune ne te va ou que ça va pas, tout simplement, bah, tu rappelles la comédienne et vous essayez de faire ce qu'il faut. Pourquoi se prendre la tête?
Putback is the feature that I'm happiest with in the game. It actually came about as sort of a little bit of an accident.
Pas d'accident, oula.
Playtesters told us they didn't want to feel like some kind of horrible person rummaging around this house and tossing everything on the floor. But there wasn't really any other option initially. That's all you could do was sort of try and lob things back into the place. So, you know, I had done some code before for placing turrets and things in other games where it, you know, will arbitrarily orient an object to be perpendicular to surface and all that sort of stuff. I told Steve that we'd have a lot of edge cases with that and it would take some time to implement, and temporarily I would just give him the ability to put objects
Voilà.
that
Le Q, le L qui
things would
fusionnent.
kind of stick to in the game, and we tried that and it worked so well that we decided to keep that, and that's
C'est
where
cool en vrai.
that came from.
C'est des tests comme ça qui donnent des petites fonctionnalités
The music for
sympathiques.
Gone Home was mainly composed over 2 separate periods, roughly a year apart. A version of Part 1 of the game had to be ready by October 2012 for submission to the 2013 Independent Games Festival, so I did all the Part 1 audio logs primarily that September. The following summer I did another round of logs for the second half of the game, as well as some Part 1 revisions in the ambient exploration tracks. One really nice side effect of the long gap between composition sessions, as well as the structure of writing music that is very literally accompanying a story, was that I ended up hitting on pretty different ideas and approaches over time as I got further along in Sam's story. The original sketches I did had mainly electric piano sounds,
Le
which
piano
are warmer
électrique,
and
je
more
connaissais pas, tiens.
naturalistic than synthesizers and other electronics instruments. As Sam and Lonnie's story developed more, though, I started to bring in acoustic guitar as well. It seemed like an appropriate
C'est
way
vrai.
for the music to build up some more familiar natural
Ah,
elements,
et en vrai, c'est
somewhat
très
echoing Sam
intéressant.
coming into her own.
Mais c'est fait par
Eventually, it
accident.
became a really tonal element of the score. After that emerged, I started to more carefully control the instrumentation for the various main categories of log subject matter, including Sam's self-reflections, Sam and Lonnie, Sam and her parents, and even Sam and Daniel. Some of those have their own melodies and themes as well. That wasn't really a grand plan from the start, and I don't expect everyone to really notice it, but it became one of my favorite things about working on this score.
C'est également ce que je fais dans une autre mesure avec certains let's play. Lorsque je considère que je ne suis pas dans la bonne tonalité dans un let's play, par exemple Vampire, c'est un peu le cas, j'étais très dans l'humour, enfin dans le sérieux on va dire, avec un peu d'humour au début. Au final ça m'a donné un petit peu moins envie de jouer, j'ai attendu un mois, je suis revenu en mode full déconne, avec un petit peu de sérieux. J'ai fait l'échange et au final je trouve que le résultat fonctionne bien. Voilà, c'est une autre mesure, mais je me suis demandé d'être l'artiste.
Fanzines, I mean, that's one of the things that we
Ok,
started
bon bah y a
right
pas de
away
titre.
was doing these Riot Girl fanzines, and everyone would contribute and write.
Afraid.
So earlier in an earlier version of the story in Gone Home, Sam and Lonnie got caught together, and Lonnie's dad
Ah oui.
was like an asshole about it and threatened to send Lonnie to live with her mom in Florida. And we cut that. It was too melodramatic and it wasn't really interesting. It was an external force that was acting on them, which I wasn't super excited about in practice and so on and so forth. But it caused there to be this concept of Lonnie's mom living in Florida, which
Florida is, of course, the worst place you can live.
well, let's not assume. But that said, it's the other side of the country.
C'est vrai que la Floride c'est là, l'Oregon c'est là.
So foreign
Et c'est à
from
l'autre bout du pays,
Oregon
c'est
and
vrai.
everything. Also, it's where I grew up.
Yeah, that was why I was
So
kidding you.
so yes, the reason I think that Lonnie's mom lives in Florida is that I grew up in Florida and I moved from Florida to Oregon when I was like 19, and I've been back to visit, but you know. If someone were to say to me, "Hey Steve, do you want to go back and live in Florida?" I would take a sheet of notebook paper and I would write "no" on it, as big as you can get, and
With
hand it back to
gravestones.
you. There would be knives, there would be
Yeah.
gravestones, there would be
Dead
lightning,
face. Yeah.
big X's in the
Yeah.
eyes, vampire teeth for some reason.
I was largely unfamiliar with Florida. My family started going there every once in a while, or when I was like in high school for Christmas, because my mom hates being cold.
C'est pas super intéressant.
Pick the wrong goddamn place to live.
I know.
C'est marrant, mais
Yeah, well, you know. But anyway, the only thing that I remember basically is that everybody had lawn flamingos, and we went around Christmas. So I remember hearing on the radio multiple times dogs barking Christmas carols.
Quoi?
That's Florida.
Florida sounds cooler than I remember it being.
In my head, that's Florida, right there.
Moi la Floride c'est le parc Universal Orlando, c'est le Disney World.
all of the sliding doors that you see in the game are actually, from a code perspective, drawers. When I made a thing that could slide along a track like that.
Les portes glissantes sont d'un point de vue du
For
codage des
making
tiroirs.
those, Steve took it and, as designers are wont to do, used it for his own purposes and came up with sliding doors in our game.
C'est marrant. Petite anecdote marrante, tiens.
Writing Sam was a unique challenge, just in the sense of, on the one hand, it was very much from my personal experience because it's about being a teenager and my memories from that time, you know, as an individual, but also who Sam was and what her experience was came about as a result of kind of problem solving that we were doing, that Carla and I were doing, just figuring out what the story and what the conflict in the story was going to be. So, you know, by the time we figured out this was all going to take place in one house, and the conflict was going to be between the members of this family, and it had to be kind of irreconcilable differences that would cause serious drama between the members of this family, you know, we started thinking, what form could that take? You know, could it be that the teenager of the family falls in love with somebody that they're not supposed to and the parents don't agree? And what is the contemporary version of that? And so, you know, we at some point decided that we were going to write Sam as a gay character.
On voit parfaitement, Steve, c'est assez limpide.
Conflict with that cause within the family, right?
Oui.
And we were excited about that opportunity just because
Ça arrive jamais dans les jeux, vous êtes sûr? Ah, de ce genre. Oh, ils ont pas tort, c'est vrai. Ça va être bon. C'est vrai que c'est une très bonne histoire LGBT. Après, il fallait le faire en sorte que ce soit pas juste. Je crois que j'aime une femme. Mais comment dire, c'est bien amené. Elle tombe amoureuse, mais elle est juste amoureuse. Une fille adolescente et gay. 2 éléments sur 3 auxquels j'ai aucune expérience. La manière dont il dit ça, quoi. Bah en fait, ce que tu fais, c'est juste tu mets dans le projet des personnes qui ont connu ça. Donc, autrement dit, tu mets de préférence peut-être un couple de femmes gays. Là, au moins, t'es sûr qu'elles sont concernées, qu'elles pourront t'aider. Ah, vous rigolez, mais en vrai, personnellement, à leur place, c'est comme ça que j'évoquerais le problème. Enfin, le problème. Ouais, j'ai rencontré des gens que je connaissais pas là, tu vois, mais genre. Après, il y a un couple lesbienne dans le jeu. Enfin, dans les programmes, enfin, dans les développeuses. Personnes qui ont participé au développement, vous avez compris.
Leap for someone to take to talk about their own, you know, coming of age and all of those very personal experiences. But, you know, I couldn't have gone into writing this character with just saying, well, I'll just assume that I'll do an okay job and write it however it seems like I should. And instead saying, you have to take this seriously and you have to actually
Ouais, il y a un respect aussi à avoir sur ce que les gens peuvent ressentir, etc. C'est pas... Je comprends.
Authentic.
Yeah, that represents them in a way that you know doesn't cheapen the experience that they've had by relying on clichés or just kind of your expectations as an outsider.
C'est bien amené.
You know, it's really about the ideals that we were trying to get across in our music. You know, I think that the move to equality for women and for everyone in the U.S. is something that we all want to be a part of, right? And we used Riot Grrrl and we used music as the tool for that, you know, and that. But it's really, to me, it's about equality for everyone. That I think is the key, and that's why young people really feel passionate, and they listen to the music and they hear that passion, and that's what they connect with.
Ok.
So I'm Sarah Argidale. This is my salad dressing.
C'est ma vinaigrette.
Named for my experience with being in Russia and that being what everyone knows me for.
Pour ça que tout le monde me connaît. Quoi?
Studied Russian in college, and I lived there for about a year teaching English when I finished school, and it was a cool thing that happened in my life. So I am a reader of the Idle Thumbs podcast, and I guess that's how I met everyone at the Fulbright company and kind of inserted myself into their lives. The Gone Home team, the Fulbright team, was nice enough to in the game for me.
La vinaigrette russe, très très bien.
When you put out any sort of content about your game online, whether it's screenshots or whether it's gameplay or anything along those lines, you're sort of at the mercy of the internet, and you sort of want to see what people are going to respond to, whether it's positive or negative. Hopefully it's positive. But we put out the screenshot a while back of the TV room, among other screenshots, and there's lots of wonderful comments, and I was really happy about that. But one of the comments that I saw a couple of times was people talking about how greasy this pizza box was. Something I hadn't noticed, so I went back and I checked it. It's a very greasy pizza box. Maybe Sam's into deep dish pizza, who knows? But I'm glad we didn't change it. I'm glad we kept it just as gross as it always was. I like it.
Bah oui, ça rajoute un peu de réalisme. En soi, les pizzas, c'est gras. C'est pas...
For a long time, the kitchen was not going to be mid-renovation the way that it is. And it's one of those things that I think that necessity, you know, a production constraint, actually made this part of the house better than it would have been if we could have just done whatever we wanted. Because for a long time we were like, okay, it's just going to be a kitchen, and so we're going to need a bunch of food, which we ended up making, and we're going to need a bunch of appliances, and we're going to need a bunch of, you know, utensils and a block with kitchen knives in it and all the kind of stuff that would be in a kitchen. And at some point we just realized we didn't have the bandwidth to, like, of all the rooms in a house, the kitchen, I think, has the most just one-off unique thingies in it, because there's all these kitchen appliances and stuff that appear nowhere else in a house. And so at some point we just realized it wasn't going to make sense for us to try to portray that in a literal way. And so I just had the idea, what if I just tore the place apart, and, you know, the cabinets were sitting on the ground and the counters were laid up against the wall, and it's an old house, and maybe before the family moved in, the kitchen hadn't been updated since the 50s, and so they decided to redo the kitchen, and they're in the middle of that when you get here. I think that that's hopefully more visually interesting than playing it straight would have been, and B, it allowed us to make this feel like a believable space in a way that we just wouldn't have been able to otherwise.
Definitely the second half was where a lot more of the emotional weight in the character came out, and that was a lot to handle, but a lot of fun to do too, because I've really not gotten to do a character that actually was so, I guess, emotionally real and so human. You know, it's sort of, you're not doing some commercial selling you thing, or not doing some sort of sci-fi fantasy world sort of story. It was very realistic and very relatable, and you sort of realize that the character's someone that you could know or that you could have been, you know, when you were younger, which I really liked. It was very exciting. The whole experience has been really good.
Mr. Egg.
Oh, you found an Easter egg!
Who found it?
You found it! This is the best! You
Ils
looked
applaudissent
up!
carrément.
No one in a first-person game looks up!
Because there's no
C'est vrai.
rewards to looking up.
Because it's hard to look up.
Also,
of
you
all
aren't allowed to
things.
look up in, like,
Wolfenstein
Dieu.
and Doom, I guess. It shot higher if there was an enemy higher.
Oh, yeah.
If you go get something recyclable from the recycle bin, I made it so that when you throw it way further than a normal thing, and you can knock the basketball out of the rafters and then carry it to Sam's room, and then when you make a
Oh,
basket,
on pouvait faire un
by
dunk.
throwing it through or by dunking,
You get a present.
you get a present, which is pictures of our cats showing up on the television.
And cats that we know.
Cats and friends.
C'est les chats qu'on connaît.
Yeah.
Um,
Cat.
Et des amis des chats.
and we
Des chats d'amour.
also we did a final wrap up, like a pickup voice recording session with Sarah Grayson, and you know we just went in there to re-record a couple of lines because we wanted to go a different direction with them after we had put them in the game and listened to them and everything, and we had some extra time, and it was like, what are we gonna do with this extra time? And we didn't know, and then we were like, we did want to make an Easter egg. What if you just reread one of the audio diaries, but instead of words, you said meow? And she was like, okay.
If you say so.
So we went back in,
Game
and
as
she was
hell.
a champ.
Yeah.
Non,
and
franchement, ça
did
devait être
it
bien marrant. Ouais.
perfectly, and
Did not break face.
no, and Josh, our audio engineer, I think, just had no idea what the hell was going on.
He was
Je comprenais rien à ce qui se passait.
And yeah, at the end of the audio diary, when you make the basket in Sam's room, you can hear from outside the booth us starting to laugh before the audio cuts off.
It's a beauty.
Yeah, no, Easter eggs are fun, and again, congratulations for looking up.
Ah bah après, je suis une vidéo, donc en même temps, c'est compliqué de ne pas avoir regardé en l'air, n'est-ce pas?
So that was probably the hardest one we had to record. It was part of the second batch of recording we did, and so I had the script a few days before we did the recording to kind of read through it all and get a feel for where the story was going. And then we'd met for lunch to go over everything and see if I had any questions before we went into the studio. And I just right away admitted, like, yep, some part of this script here, like, I'll be honest, one of these totally had me crying, like, straight up, totally couldn't help it. Figuring, like, yeah, I had my cry out, it was good, I'll be fine, get to the recording, it'll be great, you know, get it out of your system. And as soon as, like, I read the first word, I was like, no, oh God, I'm gonna start crying again, this is gonna be great. I'm like, hey, I'm a professional voice actress in the studio.
À geindre.
I'm gonna totally bawl all over your lines, and it's gonna sound ridiculous and terrible. And we're gonna have to do the take again, and it's gonna sound even worse because now I'm crying. So it actually ended up being one take. Really, it's cathartic in a way for me, I think.
Cathartique. Moi, je
Because
comprends, ça venait du cœur.
It's really, how do I put it? It's really me talking to, like, specific people. I knew it was gonna happen again. I knew it. I knew it. It's the stupid writing being so on point. Which is I mean, you know, definite praise for
On regarde pas si tu veux. Hein.
the character build up at this point, because I just become so connected with her, and making those parallels all the way along. And then you get to this point where it's like, I know exactly how you feel. Like, I know exactly what you're going through. I mean, it was completely authentic.
Je suis comme Steve.
I mean, I've enjoyed people commenting
Voilà,
on
une ado fille
the emotions of the
lesbienne.
character.
Je n'ai
And
vécu
this is always
qu'une
the
expérience
bad
sur les trois.
because it's the one
C'est un peu ça.
it
C'est un peu ce
most
que je
got
ressens,
me.
quoi. C'est compliqué de dire ah oui, je suis parfaitement d'accord.
I'd already played through the first full half of Gone Home before I started composing any music, which was really important to understand how the game felt and played and looked. But I didn't get a build of the complete game until I'd already been delivered the Part 2 audio logs, and then ended up not playing any of the second half of the game until it was fully complete and I'd written all the music. This wasn't originally my intention, but it meant I ended up fully immersed in Sam's story, essentially to the exclusion of all the other subplots of the game, which are not accompanied by specific music. I don't know if that was objectively the right call or not as the composer, but it definitely made me feel very connected to that character. I probably heard Sarah delivering Sam's story dozens or maybe hundreds of times over. It also meant I didn't actually know the literal implications of the ending of Sam's story, so I was imagining all kinds of potential endings that ended up being a lot darker than what you see when you finally do reach the attic. So as a player, when I did complete the game,
Attends,
I was
t'expliques
curious.
l'histoire de Sam, mais tu connaissais pas la fin. Il y a un truc que j'ai peut-être pas compris. Hein.
Really early on, I thought it would be like something that I thought would be engaging about Gone Home would just be finding notes and scraps in unexpected places and being able to like, you know, zoom in really far and find something that's tucked away in someone's pocket or whatever. And yeah, finding a note that was in someone's pocket that had gone through the dryer, I thought would just be a cool image. And so we were always going to do this, and we ended up making it this specific note from Lonnie to Sam, which it wasn't this for a long time.
Yeah, we had a few different go-rounds.
It was the one that's in the garbage can in the garage was here for a long time, and this one didn't exist, and there was no note in the garbage can in the garage. But yeah, I think that this note, this is I think the last note that went into the game.
It was really late.
And like the last new content, you know, that went into the game, because we did our final like pre-release playtest, and there were people.
La version de Lonnie n'a aucune justification à la fin.
Like Lonnie's decision
Pas particulièrement.
And you know, I was like, why, you know, why is that? And I think it's because Lonnie had never gotten to say her piece, you know, and never gotten to have that.
C'était son rêve quand même, elle est à l'armée. On l'a vu dans les notes de ce que racontait Sam hier. Hein. Ça devait être comme ça, bah voilà. Du coup, la note dans le sèche-linge, c'était l'avis de Lonnie sur ce qu'elle ressent, enfin sur ce qu'elle voulait réellement, du coup. Ce qu'elle ressentait. C'est intéressant. C'est où je me dis que ce serait génial en fait de participer à des tests avec des petits studios comme ça. Parce qu'en fait, tu peux littéralement travailler avec les studios en disant bah tiens, c'est quand même dommage parce que machin, et puis au final, ça fait avancer le jeu. Et je trouve ça super.
We didn't really give Kate very specific direction for this. She gave us some reference for us to approve and everything, but when we put it into the game, again, not a request from us at all. Looking at the struts and the shape of the windows and how it's this sort of deco metal structure with water outside of it, I was just like, welcome to Rapture.
Oh, I know, it's so true.
It almost feels
really
like an intentional reference, if only it were intentional.
Ah, parle de Bioshock.
You want to talk about this fucking jazz mug?
Nobody wants to talk about the jazz mug.
Well,
it's
except
the
for
worst.
Carla.
I hate it. It's the worst.
that was such a common theme when we were like approving assets or making stuff visually for Gone Home. Is just like, oh my god, that's hideous. I fucking hate it. We're putting it in the game.
Yeah, there's really much
like
of that.
Awful '90s furniture and like
we see it in a secondhand store or like
or you
just
see
on
it in the
internet,
Sears catalog we bought, and it's just like there's so many fucking ruffles on it. I want to puke. Like the wicker furniture in Mom and Dad's room.
Right.
It's like that's fucking hideous.
We need it.
Ouais, je trouve ça trop bien.
We never really
Génial.
discussed the idea of individually scoring each audio log ahead of time. I just got an email one day from Steve after they had done the first round of voice recording with Sarah Grayson, who did an amazing job as Sam. And he said he'd been thinking about the idea of giving each log a piece of music to ground it in the proper tone.
Merde.
We never really discussed the idea of
Oh, je voulais écouter ce qu'il raconte.
I had seen Bikini Kill and Bratmobile play their first show at the North Shore Surf Club in Olympia. That was Valentine's Day, 1991. And I was kind of blown away by the incredible rawness and the honesty that they wrote with And the
Oh.
kind of flippancy that they had, I thought was really interesting. But you know, to have the opportunity to talk about all of these issues that are really important to young women, I thought was really special. And I thought that what they were doing was taking the kind of intense feminist ideas that had become popular in the 70s with, you know, SDSS, and now, I mean, those really, you know, incredible ideas and the ideology of feminism, but they were putting it into a language for today, you know, for the 90s, I guess. I mean, that was
Right.
20 years ago, but it was for young people, and it was to
30
relate
ans maintenant.
to topics about sexuality, about sex, about sexual abuse, about sexism and harassment, and all these things that are really important for young women coming of age and becoming sexual beings that are really taboo to talk about.
Ok.
Around here, you will find some of Sam's Super Nintendo cartridges that she left behind. Obviously, for legal reasons, we couldn't put real games in, and so we conscripted a few of our friends in the industry who are really talented artists to make cool label art for fake Nintendo games that we came up with.
It's so true. The first one was Super Spitfire, and that was by Rachel Morris, who is a cool artist. What is it? The NYU?
The NYU Game Center. She's done a bunch
yeah.
of like posters and other art for them.
And then the next one was Adventures to Cat Returns, which is it's sort of a.
It's a mascot platformer. It's a Bubsy-esque dude having cat.
Oh yeah, but it's a regular cat. It's not a bobcat.
Yeah, it's a regular cat that rides a motorcycle towards an explosion.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lee Petty is the art director at Double Fine and worked on Brutal Legend, and I think
Ah oui.
he led up Stacking. And
Which is
yeah,
awesome.
he was nice enough to spend some of his free time making the label for Adventures to the Cat Returns.
Bah franchement,
Yeah,
grave cool.
We ran into him at GDC, and he offered to help us out, and we were all like, cool.
We were like, oh, you didn't think we'd take you up on that offer, did you? Draw us a cat.
Yeah, he regretted the error of his ways. And then the third one is Journey of Crystal, which is sort of a JRPG beast.
Gen Z,
done
connais pas.
by, Gen Z.
Qui est Gen Z?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's the art director.
Super Giant a fait l'illustration de Bastion et bosse sur Transistor. Je connais pas. Je connais pas. Super Giant, ça me parle de nom, mais les jeux qui parlent, je connais pas. Ils ont deviné que c'était elle parce que ce qu'elle a fait était si caractéristique.
It has such a signature look, you know,
Pretty distinctive.
to how she does things. So it was really cool and really exciting to have these really talented people from other studios that are inspirations to us contribute their unique art to the game.
Ok.
So these are stereoscopic?
Stereogram?
Yeah, these are stereograms.
Yeah,
That's the
stereogrammatic.
yeah. Stereograms, popularized by the Magic Eye brand of images from the 80s and 90s. These really work. Like if you cross your eyes and you can do a Magic Eye image, you can see what's in these. Spoilers, they are.
Well, as I recall, there's a cool shark.
And
I don't remember what the other one is.
Carla,
What?
it's a big heart.
Okay, it's hard for me to do those things.
And that's true for a lot of people. So the two instances of people not being able to see those images are they just can't do them, which a lot of people just can't do them, or they were born in the late 90s or after the 90s and played our game and didn't know what the hell these things were.
Yeah, they're like, what is this weird static shit? Yeah.
Well, I thought it was like we got
Ah,
some messages
ça,
that
si,
were like,
j'ai vu.
I thought it was just a weird drawing.
So good.
suis né en 2001.
Yes, as you get older, you can't hear really high-pitched sounds anymore, and
Je peux parler un petit peu de mon expérience des années 90.
Are still.
It's the circle of life.
En fait, je suis né en 2001. 28 juin 2001. Et en fait, j'ai 4 sœurs. J'ai 2 grandes, 2 petites sœurs. Mes 2 petites sœurs, elles sont nées en 2005, donc elles ont vécu une enfance parfaitement normale de fin d'année 2000, début 2010. Moi, mon enfance, c'était début, milieu 2000, en fait. Enfin, vraiment la petite enfance, je veux dire. Ce qui fait qu'en fait, dans la petite enfance, bah, j'ai été éduqué à certaines choses par mes sœurs, mes 2 grandes sœurs. J'en ai une qui est née en 91, une en 88. Donc elles ont bien connu les années 90 du coup dans leur enfance et du coup, bah, il y a plein de trucs des années 90 que j'ai eu dans mon enfance à moi, alors qu'en soi c'était 10 ans après. Du coup, j'ai un peu un mix des deux. Ce qui fait que du coup, par exemple, Gnome, la chambre, par exemple, cette chambre par exemple, la façon dont elle est décorée, on pourrait dire ouais, c'est une chambre normale, mais non, par rapport aux meubles, comment c'est agencé, etc. Bref, on est sur une chambre assez à l'ancienne. Et bah, ma sœur avait une chambre assez similaire. Et au final, lorsque j'ai fait le jeu, bah, ça m'a pas du tout choqué. Voilà, voilà. Bon, après, même par exemple, le fait que j'ai été éduqué à Pokémon, mais qu'il y a des vieux films, genre à la Jurassic Park, que j'ai vu très tôt. J'ai vu très tôt Les Dents de la Mer également. J'ai vu très tôt les Chucky. J'ai vu très tôt même du Scary Movie. Ça, c'est du fou, l'année 90, genre de film. C'est des films, voilà. J'ai vu des films des années 90, beaucoup plus tard, les films des années 2000. Du coup, j'ai été un peu entre les deux. Sans compter les Disney auxquels mes parents se sont fait une joie d'en me montrer. Et du coup, mes sœurs qui les ont toutes vues avec le temps, en fait, bah, elles m'ont montré tous les Disney. Donc en fait, je les ai quasiment tous vus. Et ce qui fait que ma grande sœur Elodie, donc, c'est celle qui est en 91, c'est celle qui a passé le plus de temps à me montrer les trucs. Elle a créé un monstre puisque je suis également, j'ai le pass annuel chez Disneyland aujourd'hui avec elle. Enfin, elle aussi, elle l'a. On l'a tous les deux. Et du coup, maintenant, je lui envoie des trucs Disney. Voilà, c'est une anecdote. Je sais pas ce que vous allez en faire, mais petite anecdote.
Mom and dad are much more actively religious. You know, there's a Bible in the foyer, and there's a Bible in Dad's bedside table.
Well, or arguably they want to appear actively religious. But yes.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, my intent was that they aren't super religious, but they probably still go to church.
And they also they would feel bad if they put their Bibles away. They'd be like, oh, we need those to be out for us to look at, to
Right.
consult in case we need them,
Yeah.
or something.
But it's definitely, I don't know, it comes from my own experience of my parents went to church and were more religious and stuff. And as, I don't know, around when I was like 10 or 12 or something, I was just sort of like, I remember having a conscious realization of just, no, this makes any sense. like I was like, this is all about a guy who was dead and then came back from the dead. That doesn't happen. Magic isn't real.
Wow.
And it was, and
Oui.
there was a process of like just being like, okay, well, I'm just not.
Ah oui, c'est vraiment dès qu'il était gosse, il s'est dit non, c'est mort.
Having a conscious realization that the only reason I wanted to go to church was because after the service they gave you free donuts.
Oh, yeah. No, it's fine.
Ah, c'est marrant ça.
So I don't know. It's probably just partially me projecting and trying to show that Sam is re-examining her own values as she gets older.
Mais c'est intéressant parce qu'au final, ça porte après dans le jeu parce qu'en fait, ce que vous pensez, ce que vous avez vécu, ce que vous aimez,
I never
vous allez forcément le mettre dans votre contenu.
tried really hard to like I don't know. Actually, yeah, I don't know. It was normal church behavior. Like I would go and like help out with my younger siblings, and like my parents always went to church and whatever, and I'd go along. And there was like a couple of people that I knew there and everything. But it took me until I was about.
En fait, l'église, c'est
I think
surtout
it was, like,
culturel en
13,
fait.
I spent a significant amount of time really trying to like to be like, all right, I'm gonna do this church thing. I'm gonna try really hard, and I would like get annoyed at people when they said oh my god and stuff.
De quoi ça paraissait? Ah, de se persuader.
It was, I don't know, lasted like whatever 6 or 8 months or something, and then it broke and I couldn't do it anymore. And I forget what I did something. I ruined something in the church through total not caring.
J'ai fait une maison avec les cartes de questions d'un jeu sur la Bible. Et donc,
Like flashcards.
les cartes de quiz, genre un trivial poursuite mais basé sur la Bible. Avec les cartes, j'ai fait une grosse maison. Un trivial poursuite mais sur la Bible. Tu sais quoi, rien à foutre. Et j'ai collé toutes les cartes entre elles. Je me souviens qu'un gros paquet de cartes collées complètement bousillées. On a arrêté de m'inviter à l'église. Et ben voilà. Elle est marrante cette anecdote, tiens. Le Dream Phone.
One of the assets that I really liked creating in the game were these board games. So there's 3 in total of them throughout the house. Ideally there'd be more, but we had to focus on the getting the walls built and things like that.
Si on aurait
But I
bien
really
aimé
like
faire
them.
plus,
They're
mais il
just
fallait faire les
a
murs.
simple, extremely cute. There's something about environment design that's really fun. There's really goofy aspect of it where you have to create fake brand names. You have to create fake toys and fake storefronts. Maybe my favorite is in the game Costume Quest, when you're going to the shopping mall, there's a store called Why Not Flip Flops.
Oui,
It's
notre
been really happy.
flip-flops.
But this one is a parody of Dream Phone, which is a awful game that came out in the
Ah oui, c'est genre,
early 90s,
t'as le
where you
téléphone qui
sit
sonne.
around
Ah,
the
je peux
table
essayer
with
mon
your
amoureux.
friends and you pick up this
Vous
plastic
rappelez des mecs
phone
sexy,
and
voilà,
these
avec un plastique
sexy
téléphone rouge
boys
pour
and
voir
see which
lequel
one
nous aimait
wants
bien.
you.
C'est ça, j'ai
It
connu
doesn't
le
really
Dreamphone,
suit
je
Sam's
sais ce que c'est.
personality exactly. I figure maybe it was given to her by a well-intentioned relative who doesn't quite have her personality down. And maybe she played it once on a lark and then put it in the closet and that's where it stays.
Là où je me dis quand même que elle a quand même une chambre de ouf. Déjà, elle est très grande. Mais genre, là, t'as la place pour un lit 2 places. T'as des petites fenêtres ici. Là, bon, t'as un bureau. Bon, déjà, il est en bordel, mais surtout, je pense qu'il faudrait peut-être le changer. Mais genre, ouais, t'as plein d'espace ici. Et t'as en plus un placard, quoi. Une seconde pièce. Je sais pas, moi, ça me rend. Je suis content de voir ça. Je sais pas pourquoi. I am happy.
Yeah, I ended up being pretty happy with this. This is the only picture of Lonnie that we had for a really long time, and I was really glad to actually come up with something that we liked, since this kind of thing is really hard, especially when it is such a major character. The other thing is Lonnie has a cross necklace. She also has some Catholicism in her family.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I don't think that particular detail has been called out by anybody. People notice like the Bibles and whatnot, but yeah, I intended for Lonnie, like I thought it would be interesting if she came from a more conservative family than Sam's, in that she actually wears a cross necklace and carries some.
Ouais, ça renforce l'idée un mot
Catholicism
impossible
with
en
her,
plus,
and
elle a
her
Roméo et
dad
Juliette.
was an army guy, and her background is even in
Bien
some ways
intéressant.
maybe kind of more stifling than Sam's, and that's probably why she's a more like openly rebellious person on the outside.
Ouais, j'approuve. C'est une bonne idée.
I was one of the hosts of the Idle Thumbs video game podcast for a year or two, and I go on there, and every once in a while those guys are my friends, and I didn't want to put Idle Thumbs references all over the game, but I did want to have Idle Thumbs references in the game, so we localized them entirely to this one piece of paper. So almost everything on here is an Idle Thumbs reference, and specifically to a weird exchange that we had about Will Wright's GDC talk.
Will Wright, c'est le créateur des Sims.
Where
Ceux qui se posent la question.
he didn't want everybody to show up and crowd the place, so he gave his speaker name as Phaedrus, and then did a talk about
Par fusée postale. Qu'est-ce que c'est que ça?
The idea of rocket mail, which was going to be like done by the it was pitched by the US
Ça avait été lancé par la
Post
poste américaine dans les années 50.
So, and then the thing on the podcast was about how
Ça parlait de
Phaedrus
Phaedrus et de son père,
and
son
so
brother.
anyway, whatever, the
Enfin, peu importe,
brother
la brother,
of
naturellement, c'est
Phaedrus,
une Phaedrus.
and you can't hardly see the icon in the back of
Parce
the
que c'est
computer,
diffus,
but
mais
there's the
de
50
fusée des années
icon
50, c'est le
in the
logo
back that's like the
de Phaedrus
the
Motors.
logo of,
Ok, c'est marrant.
of Phaedrus Motors.
Marrante
And then
l'anecdote.
also
Donc
he
vive
had
Wright.
the
C'est une
reference
référence
that
à cause
Will
d'une
Wright
histoire
was
de moto.
making, and that is a secondary reference here because it's a motorcycle thing, is that in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle
Le traité du zen et l'entretien des motocyclettes.
the author is having kind of an ongoing
L'auteur, il parle sans arrêt du personnage de Phaedrus.
from Greek history called
C'est peut-être... Bah non, je sais pas.
motorcycles and blah blah blah. So it's a big knot of obnoxious
Un peu
references.
snob à des trucs idiots. Bah ouais. Bon, au final, c'est la petite ref marrante.
Barf Burger is enjoyed by all. So the thing is, I drew the Barf Burger because I drew all of Lonnie's drawings. So I drew the 2 cats on the motorcycle and the Captain Allegra drawings and stuff like that.
En fait, Captain Allegra, c'est vrai
was
ça.
really I think that it goes hand in hand with I did Lonnie's handwriting in the game, and Carla did Sam's handwriting, and that was partly because the two of us were going to be working the most closely on this stuff, and so being able to just quickly like rewrite a note that we wanted to change and scan it and update the game and not have to like email somebody to say, oh, could you write that again or whatever, was really useful. And also we both just happen to have sloppy teenager handwriting that looks believably 17 years old. Also, I have a believably 17-year-old level of drawing skill, so
Moi aussi.
that worked too. But
Je comprends.
it was
En fait,
fun
je suis
because
très proche de
basically
Steve.
the
C'est
notes
très très
were
perturbant.
created in real life in essentially the same way they were in the fiction, where I would write my part of the note and then hand the piece of paper to Carla and she would write her part of the note, and we
Ah, c'est marrant, tiens.
constructed it that way.
C'est marrant. Faire comme ça, par contre, je trouve ça sympa.
A lot of Gone Home is about pointless interactivity that is sort of
Ouais, c'est vrai,
things
stratégie,
being
juste pour être
interactive for the
interactif.
sake of them being interactive, but it really comes from our inspirations of immersive sims like System Shock and Bioshock and Thief, where a big part of the design philosophy behind those games and Gone Home is that the world needs to be really internally consistent, and there's this feeling that if there's something that your character might do, you should be able to do it in the game. So in Bioshock, for instance, you can flush all the toilets and you can turn on all of the faucets, and that's also true in like Deus Ex and Dishonored. Like, and sometimes, you know, like the water fountains in Deus Ex give you like 1 health or whatever, but really you can interact with them because there's this expectation of, if you could interact with that, if you encountered it in this world, we should let you do that, right? So you know, all of the faucets in our game can be turned on, and they can be turned on so that you can turn them on, and you can flush all of the toilets, and it extends into our philosophy behind you can pick up every plastic cup and toothbrush and Kleenex box, not because it's going to add a whole lot to your understanding of this world to be able to look at the underside of a cup, but to pay off that expectation and say to the player, yeah, you could pick that up and look at it, so we're going to let you do that, and it's going to be consistent interactively with the stuff that is important, and that makes it your job to look at everything and give it your attention, and for you to decide and understand and figure out what has significance and what doesn't, and not for us to tell that.
Une bonne manière de penser. Bon, après, c'est sujet à débat parce que c'est vraiment débat sur l'interactivité dans le jeu vidéo, donc en soi.
The boxes of tampons that you can find in the washrooms around the house, they weren't originally on the list of items that needed to be modeled, but when you're creating a bathroom at that level of fidelity, and when you're creating a bathroom for a teenage girl, no less, the idea of not having something like that is it's kind of jarring. It was kind of jarring to me.
Ouais, ça sonnait faux. Bah, il y a 2
especially 'cause
femmes.
when you're at that age, your period is something that kind of really defines your mood at any given day, and maybe what you wear and where you go. So, you know, I just thought it was, you know, something necessary for human
Je ne parle
storytelling,
pas.
especially of a girl
Je
going
ne suis
through
pas une
what
femme, donc parler des règles, ça me dépasse. Ça ne me concerne pas, j'ai pas envie de dire des choses que je ne connais pas.
One of the most comforting things in the world to me is having somebody like brush my hair or stroke my head. Like my mom, when I wasn't feeling well, I could lie down in her lap, she would just brush my hair. And it would always make me feel better. Like the weirdest way, I couldn't figure out why, but it just seemed like this friendly connection to somebody that it is, like she says, it is strangely intimate in a way that I'd not really, I guess, put into words until reading that part of the script. Where that's what I was thinking of, was like that connection, that sort of human touch, that it's something so friendly and so loving that you can do. And that whole idea of like touching someone's scalp being so intimate, it just made me think of that. Just those wonderful little moments where just a touch can be so much more.
The life cycle of the condom.
That's not a real thing, Steve.
The life cycle of the condom.
All right.
By Carla Zamanda.
Is as follows. Initially, condom was a separate plot point. It was an actual plot point. We gave it to Lonnie, and we had Sam find it in Lonnie's purse, and it made Sam worried about what the hell she was doing with it, etc. And that was sort of a wedge to drive them apart when that was the storyline, which it no longer is. And because we decided we hated it. But I had already made the condom asset, which I'm actually really proud of. I really like that condom. It's really good. Also, I think Nero is a really good brand for condom. Anyway.
Elle est très fière de son préservatif.
Yeah,
Voilà.
But it's, it's the whole like notably
C'est une référence au cheval de Troie. Je ne vais rien dire. Cette blague est beaucoup trop facile.
The specular on it looks really nice.
It does look good.
Ah, j'ai envie, mais non.
So we had this, extra asset lying around, and we were like, we were all, oh, it's a shame that it's going to waste, but whatever. Sometimes things don't get used. And then we remembered the horror of digging around in your parents' drawers and finding their condoms and stuff and being just utterly fucking horrified. And we decided we would give that to you, the player.
Vous voulez une anecdote auquel vous seriez bien passé? Mes parents n'ont jamais utilisé de préservatif. Voilà, donc j'ai pas connu cette chance.
One of my favorite things that came out during development was someone wrote an email mistakenly referring to mittens, and Steve replied in the voice of Katie, saying, "It's just Mitten. She's only one cat, Mom."
D'accord.
Another board game. This one wasn't done by me though. This one was done by Carla. But I really like it because the ghost figures on the back of the game are actually long deceased family members of mine. When I was home at Christmas, I was digging through my family's basement, sort of getting an idea of what a basement has in it, just sort of for set dressing purposes. And while I was down there, I found a big box that my family actually hadn't seen. We got a big box of things from my grandmother after she passed away. And inside this box was all these tin types, love letters and sort of emigration papers and notes from as far back as the 1850s when my family had emigrated from Scotland and Ireland. And I asked my family if it was possible that I include these in some sort of artistic project, and they said sure. They gave me their blessing, and I scanned them. And I didn't know if they were actually going to make it in the game, but then I saw that Carla had made this game, and really liked that they showed up as ghosts on the back of it. And
Ouais, c'est marrant.
it's sort of, I think, a nod for Idle Thumbs listeners who really feel quite passionately about ghosts, as it turns out. Surprise!
So there's a lot less density in the house than there would be in a real house. Like if you look around your house, there's just junk piled.
Ah oui, parce que c'est sûr que...
Like,
It's just our house.
I think it's most house.
Oh, you're right.
But so our strategy was you either fully invest in something and put like a plausible representation of this aspect of a room in, or you just don't put it in at all. And the player will fill in the gaps between like, oh, these are all the things that represent the kind of room I'm supposed to be in, and it doesn't jump out at me that there's no toilet plungers in the bathroom or whatever. But the biggest instance of this that I think actually totally worked, because no one has ever called it out, is, surprise, think about it, there are no shoes.
C'est vrai qu'il n'y a aucune chaussure dans... C'est vrai? C'est une très bonne remarque.
Where's your brain now?
And I don't think anybody's noticed it, and I think it's because...
C'est ça, c'est en fait, il faut trouver les objets qui sont cohérents à mettre dans la maison, mais ceux qui ne servent pas en soi, qui ne dérangent pas.
Mom would have to have 10 pairs of shoes and her work boots, and Dad would need to have some tennis shoes and some work shoes, and so on and so forth.
Et c'est tout. Les baskets, chaussures de travail, c'est tout. Personne ne l'a vu, je n'ai absolument pas fait attention à ça.
Almost none of the events, the little events in the game are scripted.
Ah, est-ce qu'il a parlé de la feuille qui tombe?
As far as like triggering when you do something.
On avait discuté hier soir.
All of the thunder and lightning and the creaky noises in the house.
Ouais, c'est pas choquant.
They're all just randomized on timers. The only like scripted
Quand on va reposer le crucifix, lorsque je le détecte, ça fait sauter l'ampoule.
Secret passageway when you look at the crucifix.
Dans le passage secret. Je suis autorisé à m'amuser un peu avec le joueur. Bah tu fais peur, espèce d'enculé.
People play the game and say, you know, oh, the way you scripted it so that right when I walked into the TV room there was that big thunder and lightning strike, like that was really spooky, or you know, I walked through that one door and then you played that sound behind me, and it's like it's awesome that the combination of all the different kind of like significant actions
Ouais, ça,
you
en
can
fait, ça
do
fait
in
une
the
expérience
game,
inédite à chaque fois
like
que tu fais le
crossing a
jeu, et
TV room
même
or opening a door
selon
or
les
this, that,
joueurs,
and
en
the other
fait.
thing.
C'est
And
bien.
the randomization of stuff can make it seem
Ah voilà,
like
chaque
the
élément a une
random
signification
elements
particulière, c'est juste du
have
hasard.
extra
C'est
significance
ouf.
to them, but in
C'est une
fact,
très bonne
it's
idée.
like, you just got lucky,
C'est une très bonne
basically.
idée.
Yeah, it's total apophenia because like it's just
De l'apophénie.
because there's enough
Hein?
random things going on and you can do enough things that eventually some of them are going to line
C'est
up,
plutôt cool,
which
ouais.
is cool.
Franchement. Une petite
I
cassette.
really enjoyed playing Gone Home. I have to say it was pretty exciting to find the Heavens to Betsy tape, you know, because that was really, I mean, those songs really did come out on a cassette tape at the time, and that really was how people discovered the music was getting a cassette tape passed around. So getting to put it in the actual tape player and play it and listen to our song, it definitely gave me chills. I mean, it was like, wow, you know, how exciting for a young person today to get that moment of discovery and to listen to our music. I mean, I think it's great.
Okay, the Wildfire book. Oh, man, look at this thing. Yeah, this was another one of those situations in which I totally felt like a weird creepo when I was doing research, and there was a lot of really horrifying romance novel covers. This poor guy was on somebody's Flickr account that was allowed, that was Creative Commons attribution licensed, and I think he was playing volleyball or something. And I don't know.
So you just put suspenders on him and put an axe in his hand, and now he's a fireman.
Yes, I did. I did, and I will cop to it, and I do it again. Also,
Je recevrai. Oh non.
I initially picked
Des bretelles sadomaso.
suspenders.
Quoi?
So you had started working on it, and I went upstairs, and then I came back down.
And like Jan and I were like, we're all like, what should we do for this?
And I was,
thing?
Oh
I was
là
like,
là
those
là
are
là.
fucking leather daddy suspenders.
Qu'est-ce qui vous prend? Bah oui.
And what
Puis
I
je dis,
should have said,
qu'est-ce que
damn
vous
it, he
faites?
noticed.
Ah, vous voulez l'ajuster sans qu'il le voit? Ah merde. Ouais, ça aurait été marrant.
Talking about a place for Christmas stuff?
This is where Christmas Duck goes.
Oh, it's Christmas Duck's little house.
It's his little house.
C'est son petit nid à lui.
There was something that I always assumed would happen. I know that some people did do it because we got tweets, you know, like on the day of release or whatever, of people referring to this.
Right.
But kind of based on the gnome in Half-Life 2 Episode 2 or whatever, and just a general, I think,
Ah, tu le gardes en tête.
to take the first kind of personified thing that
Il
you
te marque,
encounter
donc en soi
and,
tu dis bah tiens j'aimerais bien le
Drag it
le
around the
replacer.
house with you.
yeah, you know, like try to take it to the end
On
of it,
prend, on a du mal à le
be
lâcher.
there with you or whatever.
Ah,
I knew that
peut-être,
some
je sais
people
pas.
were going to take Christmas Duck all the way from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, and that we needed to pay them
Après
off
s'ils ont
somehow.
peur aussi, je peux
I
comprendre.
used the putback system that in almost all cases is just used to, okay, you pick up a clean Xbox and now you can put it back where you got it. But in reality, I can put one of those putback triggers anywhere in the game that I want. So there's one putback trigger for Christmas Duck where you initially pick him up, and then I put another putback trigger for Christmas Duck here. But yeah, if you bring Christmas Duck up here, you get Katie's interaction prompt that says, "There you go, Christmas Duck," and you put him back in his little nest, and he gets to go back to his home at the end.
Good old Christmas Duck.
Ça, je me dis en fait que la chambre de Sam, elle est trop bien. Bon, elle est mal rangée, hein. Ça c'est pas le souci. Hein. En vrai, t'es comme ça. Après, t'as une pièce là, t'en as une autre là. Ça continue. Et là, t'as encore une pièce là. Bon, après, pour aménager, ça doit être un enfer. Mais au moins...
I think this is one where I love the way the music makes it so uplifting. Because it starts out in this very, sad point where it's sort of just like, you kind of don't know what, I don't know, to me it was very emotionally ambiguous in a sense. I mean, she's saying like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it! Like something's happened, something's gone wrong." And as she kind of unravels the story about how she missed the first 2 calls, which then take you right back to one of the first things you probably do when you get in the house was find the voice
Ah, pas du
recorder.
tout.
So I love how it loops it around, and then it starts building this positive feeling of like how this isn't the end, and we are going to see each other again. And there's this wonderful elation that she sort of dawns on in a funny way, and that it's just it's so hopeful, and it's really nice to connect to that and just try and express a little bit of levity after so much weight has built up over the course of her life in this little window.
It's one of those things where we had always wanted to, well, we had wanted to pay off Sam's darkroom by letting you go in it and see photos that she had taken.
Mhm.
And B, this started from a point of me just being
T'as bien joué
like,
avec les photos?
we'll end the game the same way we ended Minerva's Den. It'll be fine. But between those two things, we initially figured we were signing up for photos that would have taken a lot of time and effort to make, of like a photo strip of the 2 of them in a photo booth, which would mean like let's do 4 pairs of photo painted photos of these characters, and just like pictures of them in the mirror together, and all of this very high cost.
Ouais, c'est vrai, ça aurait fait beaucoup de boulot. Mais après, ça aurait, je sais pas, ça aurait vraiment donné quelque chose. C'est peut-être mieux comme ça. Ou alors, ils auraient pu le faire un petit peu caché, tu vois, mais pas ici. Comme c'est actuellement, c'est très bien.
Just not that much of a pro in order to be able to do that fast, and so yeah, it would have been months.
Yeah, so we have the one very close-up photo of Lonnie's eye, and then we just brainstormed what are evocative images of the 2 of them and their life that we could create without having to show their faces a bunch. And I think that, like so many things,
c'est très bien.
taking a step back and only seeing the implication of these characters.
C'est mieux, je trouve aussi. Je suis d'accord. Je préfère le subjectif comme ça.
Being less literal is definitely more meaningful in this particular case.
Yeah.
To the extent that I remember when I took these holding hands photos with Rachel. I don't know. I took 20, a dozen, something like that, different versions of them, and then I was going through them afterward to try and find the one that I wanted to use to Photoshop in the letters on the heart and everything. And I found myself thinking, oh, these are all so sweet. And like, I had just taken them 10 minutes ago with my roommate, and it was just like, somehow this here is more evocative and meaningful than a happy face, I guess. But anyway, yeah. I was fooled by my own shtick, which is extremely silly.
So this is
voilà,
the
on a le
last
100%.
room in the game, or at least the last room chronologically in the story.
You made it.
You did it! Yeah, this is where you find Sam's journal that you had been hearing diary entries from. And it's revealed, or I guess implied retroactively, that the game has been taking place in a flashback, basically, and Katie read Sam's diary that was addressed to her and is now thinking back to what she saw in the house. So thanks for playing through with commentary mode and listening to us and Yonaman and Kate and Sarah Grayson and Chris Remo and Corin Tucker from Heavens to Betsy and Slater Kinney, who, again, thank you to her for taking her time to record some of her recollections and thoughts for this. But yeah, just thanks for playing, and we hope that you got something good out of all of our jibber jabber.
It's okay if you didn't.
Que pour le trophée.
Bye everybody, bye!
Goodbye, we love you!
Yeah, I guess.
Il y a toujours ce petit truc quand je termine un mode commentaire où je suis un peu triste. Bah, franchement, en fait, le mode commentaire, je trouve ça bien. Mais en fait, ça changera. Comment dire? Vraiment, voilà, donc jeu 100%, vous voyez, on a bien tous les trophées qu'on s'est fait. Alors celui-là, il compte pas parce qu'on l'a fait, vous voyez, donc le jour où j'ai tourné l'épisode, donc le 13 avril. Donc voilà, donc aujourd'hui, on est le 11. Donc voilà, le 10, on a tout récupéré. Il restait que en coulisses, qui aura duré 1h40, beaucoup plus que ce que je pensais. Je vais m'arrêter le stream d'ici quelques instants, du coup, parce que bah, il va falloir que j'aille me reposer. J'ai quand même passé une énorme journée. J'espère ne pas trop accuser le coup de main, histoire de continuer à travailler. Je prends du plaisir à faire ce que je fais sur YouTube. Franchement, je ne fais qu'adorer. Voilà. Franchement, ouais, franchement, les modes commentaires, moi j'aime beaucoup dans le sens où c'est vraiment le côté making of, moi que je kiffe. Mais quand c'est du. Il y a des anecdotes qui sont peut-être pas en trop, mais c'est pas forcément super intéressant, quoi, tu vois. Ou alors ça pourrait être largement raccourci. Genre le truc de la Floride en disant oui, dans le script de base, le père il avait menacé Sam de l'envoyer chez sa mère en Floride. Ok. Et du coup, bah, au final, on a enlevé l'idée parce que du coup, bah, ça revenait à un côté dramatique qui n'était pas forcément très utile. Très bien. Et puis, en plus, c'est une fun fact au fait que bah, je viens de Floride. Voilà, tu t'arrêtes là. J'ai raconté les mêmes trucs qu'ils ont dit dans le jeu, mais ils sont un peu partis en disant oui, alors, moi, vivons de la Floride. Parce qu'ils sont... Moi, je suis arrivé en Oregon à 19 ans. À la limite, tu peux raconter, mais fais vite. C'est pas méga intéressant. Du coup, je me suis retrouvé là en mode ouais, bah, vous pouvez raconter votre vie, de toute façon, c'est votre jeu. Hein, mais moi, je préfère avoir des commentaires sur le jeu directement, ce qui est un peu horrible. Mais voilà, Gnome, c'est très très bien. Gnome, c'est très très bien. Et d'ailleurs, si vous voulez une anecdote, Gnome et Derester et Edith Finch sont tous les trois assez proches. Derester, donc c'est de Chinese Room, avait fait également Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. Je me tâte à me boucler le jeu à 100%, bien propre, bien comme il faut, pour pouvoir le proposer en let's play, puis derrière en stream. Je sais pas ce que vous en pensez, vous n'hésitez pas à me dire dans les commentaires, ça me fait toujours très plaisir, ou dans le chat évidemment. Mais du coup, ouais, c'est de Fulbright Company. Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait comme jeu à part Gnome? Ils ont fait Tacoma et Open Roads. Ils ont fait 3 jeux. C'est un jeu vidéo d'aventure très subjectif traitant des femmes et de la sexualité. Donc c'est exactement ça. Hein. On est clairement dans. Bah, c'est tout. Hein. Nos personnage principal est féminin. Dans les premières semaines sur sa sortie, Gnome était la meilleure vente sur Steam et a fait la couverture du New York Times. Le jeu gagnait le titre Best Debut au BAFTA Game Awards et au Game Developer Choice Awards. En 2014, ainsi que le jeu de titre de jeu de l'année en 2013 de Polygon. Sorti occasionnant un débat sur la narration, sur la jouabilité dans les jeux vidéo, notamment du fait du choix des développeurs privilégiant le scénario, l'empathie pour le personnage et l'absence d'armes. C'est quand même fou, hein. C'était le tout début du Walking Simulator. Ou du jeu narratif comme ça. Il est compatible avec les manettes, choix de développement que Polygon rapporte à l'expérience en termes donc des jeux AAA. Fulbright a travaillé avec l'éditeur Midnight City pour un portage sur console. Donc Midnight City, donc c'est comme ça que j'ai le jeu sur Play. Hein. Le studio avait à la base développé Gnome sur PC tout en pas faire face à des limitations techniques. Pour essayer de passer au jeu suivant, l'équipe a recherché un éditeur pour faire le travail à leur place. Quelques temps après la sortie du jeu, en juin 14... Oh sérieux? Johan Man Norganem quitta Fulbright pour fonder son propre studio, Nimble Games, de Fulbright, qui a raccourci son nom en Fulbright 2 mois plus tard. L'équipe affirme que son objectif restera le même, les jeux d'exploration narratif immersifs et inoubliables. Chris Plante chez Polygon cite à Fulbright comme un exemple pour un petit studio géré indépendamment dont les jeux montrent des signes de progrès social dans l'industrie vidéoludique. Et c'est très très bien. C'est très très bien. Et du coup après, bon là il faudrait... Non, bah j'ai les noms des personnes qui sont dedans. Mais très compliqué d'essayer de choper... Voilà, de choper qu'est-ce que Steve il a fait après comme jeu ou avant, sur quoi il a travaillé, etc. Apparemment, c'est pas trouvable. Mais bon. Bon, en tout cas, YouTube, merci beaucoup d'avoir suivi encore un autre jeu terminé rapidement à 100%. Écoutez, mesdames et messieurs, nous enchaînons un petit peu. Après, nous allons partir sur quelques trophées Jurassic World Evolution sur le Sanctuaire de Claire. Et je crois qu'il y a un trophée sur Retour à Jurassic Park. Et on va bien jouer pour essayer d'avoir le platine. Bien mon Flo. Non, il préfère aller dans le panier. Bon, bah tant pis. En tout cas, les amis, merci beaucoup d'avoir suivi cette vidéo. N'hésitez pas à liker, commenter, partager, vous abonner à la chaîne, me dire ce que vous avez pensé en commentaire. C'est très important pour moi pour m'améliorer dans mon contenu en général. Je vous fais de très gros bisous. Et puis à la prochaine. Salut YouTube. Et voilà Twitch. Bon, bah, le record est terminé. 1h40. Je m'attendais pas à faire 2 heures sur Godot. Il est trop tard. C'est comme d'habitude. Hein, pour minuit. Comme j'ai dit hier, on n'a pas fini trop tard. Mais je me suis couché tard au final parce que j'ai fait beaucoup de taf en fait sur Gnome, plus sur les 2 découvertes. J'ai fait les miniatures, j'ai préparé les machins en avance. Du coup, je me suis couché tard. Hein. J'avais dit que je voulais finir tôt, j'ai fini par finir tard. C'était très con, mais au final, j'ai fait ce que je voulais. Donc voilà, je vais essayer de me reposer. Du coup, parce que comme j'ai dit, j'ai passé une journée de 9h avec un stream derrière. Je vais me reposer tranquillement. On se revoit demain. Demain, Supermarket Simulator, je vous le... Non, je vais pas promettre, mais logiquement. Voilà, faut bien qu'on y joue un jour. Voilà. Allez. Twitch, je vous embrasse. Merci beaucoup. Ça va être 2 petites heures, mais bon, au moins, ce sont 2 heures bien rentabilisées. On a fini Godot à 100%, mine de rien. J'espère que, en tout cas, revenir sur des vieux jeux qu'on a fait il y a longtemps, ça vous plaît toujours. Moi, j'adore. Pas de soucis. Je kiffe ce que je suis en train de faire actuellement sur YouTube et sur Twitch. J'ai un énorme plaisir à le faire et je surfe sur le plaisir. Ah oui, bah, il y a des moments le stream j'y allais un peu à reculons, mais en même temps bah, c'est pas que ça me plaisait pas, c'est genre c'était Mario Kart, donc c'était de la rage tout le temps. Puis au final bah, ça me donnait plus envie de stream. Puis après bah, je me disais bah non je peux pas streamer sur ça parce que je dois d'abord faire ça, et maintenant c'est juste du plaisir et c'est tout ce qui compte. Voilà. Allez Twitch, enfin YouTube, allez Twitch, je t'embrasse, on se revoit demain soir. N'oublie pas de stream mercredi, je suis à Disney. À part si je rentre chez moi, mais je vais rentrer chez moi à 23h, donc je ne pourrai pas streamer pour minuit, ce serait quand même vachement dommage. Donc, quoi qu'il arrive, pas de stream mercredi. 99% de chance qu'il n'y ait pas de stream mercredi. 99. Les 1%, c'est ou alors je vais pas à Disney pour une raison X ou Y, ou alors je stream à 2h du matin. Ou à 3h, à 4h, bref, vous avez compris, je stream très tôt le matin. Je vois pas l'intérêt, mais bon, voilà. Allez,